Hey everybody, it is Sunday morning and I am getting ready to pull the cover off of my Gourami tank, and then we're going to get the lights turned back on for the first time since Wednesday. So we're going to find out if I've got any terrible tragedies happening in this tank. If you follow along regularly, you'll know that I lost my black ghost knifefish due to oxygen deprivation. And in this tank, I have not been running any kind of air stone, although I do have a fair amount of circulation in this tank, and I haven't had any problems in the past. So I can already see the main fish are still in there swimming around. So let's have a look when I get the light turned on here. So, alright, let's get off the tripod here and have a closer look. Alright, so obviously the angelfish is doing well. My striped Raphael is still doing okay down on the bottom. Guppies, swordtails, my one lonely neon is still in there. My little female Gourami is still in there. It's my Gourami tank, yet I was having trouble thinking of the word Gourami. And I'm still looking for my chocolate Gourami, which I do not see at the moment, but it's probably in there somewhere. The Gouramis are labyrinth fish, and they can actually breathe or draw in atmospheric air, and then they can withdraw the oxygen from that. So an oxygen poor environment is not any kind of obstacle to a Gourami. In fact, they live in oxygen poor environments in their natural habitat, and yet I do not see him anywhere in here, and it's usually not a difficult fish to find. I think I'm going to probably wind up treating this tank with the Chemi Clean again, because all that bright green you can see up there is not algae. I'm not sure why blacking the tank out for 4 days didn't have an impact on that, but you can see down here where all of that stuff that used to be sort of brown, all the brown has died out of it, and all we're left with is the bright green stuff. So that indicates that it's time to do another Chemi Clean treatment, which will involve putting an air stone in here and getting all that up and running. So I'll probably wind up doing that this afternoon. I'll do a little bit of a water change, and then I will go ahead and get this tank started prepping to do the treatment. I'm still looking for my chocolate Gourami. That's the one fish, well, the striped Raphael I've had for years, so I'd really be heartbroken if I lost him. But the other one in this tank that is one of my favorite fish is my chocolate Gourami, and I just don't see it anywhere. Now, it's a tiny little fish and it can hide easily, but you think at some point I would have seen it by now. I don't see its little body floating on the surface anywhere. Alright, so this is going to be a puzzler. The tank is covered by cloth, so even if it tried to, jump out of one of those cracks in the back, it can't really do it because there's nowhere for it to go. It would have just fallen back into the tank. And yet, I do not see it. Ah, there it is. Is that it? Yeah, there he is. Probably after 4 days of darkness, the light shining in there has gotten him a little freaked out, but I can see him. That's him right there. Right next to where you can see that glare of the light. So he's still in there. He's still facing upright. His color looks a little bit off, but that's probably just stress. He doesn't look like he's bloated or sick or not doing well. Let's see if we can get a little better look at him up there. I'm trying. There he is. And he's going over and he's pecking algae off the glass, so that's certainly a good sign. Alright, I'm happy, I'm satisfied. Everybody survived my 4-day blackout in this tank. What I'm not terribly happy about is all of this green that I've got growing all over everything. It's starting to coat the roots. It's starting to get on the glass here. So today is definitely going to be a water change and then a Chemi Clean treatment. So the last tank I did this with, my black ghost knifefish tank here, I had A couple of losses, one of which being my black ghost knifefish, unfortunately. But everybody else seems to have survived it. They did die because of oxygen deprivation. I had several things going on in this tank, not least of which is the blackout. The blackout will cause an oxygen drop. But the reason I didn't have any problems in my Gourami tank is because I've got a lot of vigorous circulation going in there, and it kept the tank oxygenated enough. This tank, however, did not. The power head I have in the back is pretty small for this tank. As you can see, it's even more reduced by all the crud that's stuck to it. So it really wasn't swirling a lot of air, or a lot of water rather. And then my filter intake had stuff all gunked all over it too, and so the filter was barely moving any water. And this tank was darn near stagnant. I mean, water was moving around in it, but barely. And just, you know, I think that alone would have been enough to cause an oxygen deprivation situation. But coupled with the fact that I'd blacked the tank out and all of the plants in there were basically using up the oxygen as well as the fish using the oxygen, and it wound up being a disaster. The smaller fish were able to kind of hover around the surface, and they survived. I guess my dwarf pike cichlid was able to do the same, but the black ghost knifefish, I guess just being such a large fish and being a bottom-dwelling reclusive sort of fish, it's just not in its nature to go up near the surface and try to gulp air or whatever. Possibly it's just not even capable of doing that. And unfortunately, I lost my black ghost knifefish after about 6 years of owning it. So that was a little bit of a heartbreak, but another painful lesson, you know, in the aquarium hobby. I've been doing this for about 6 or 7 years, maybe 8 years now. I started keeping fish, well, I guess it's been a little longer than that. I guess around 2010 is when I started keeping fish. So, wow, almost 10 years now. But I just recently started doing the blackout method of treating algae. In all the years I've kept fish, I've never tried that before. And I found it to be really successful. But with anything you do, there's always a learning curve. And you make mistakes and, you know, you get better at it as you go. And unfortunately, I've learned the hard way that if you're going to black out a tank, I really, really recommend putting an air stone in there. I probably should have put one in my Gourami tank as well, but I've already blacked that tank out several times, and I've not had any issues since my initial issue, which, again, I should keep that in mind, too. I did lose my whiptail catfish in that tank the first time I blacked it out, and I did not have an air stone in there. So my rule of thumb from now on is going to be that if I'm blacking out a tank, I'm going to put an air stone in it just to be safe. Why take the chance? It's easy. They're not expensive. I've got spare air pumps lying around that I just don't use for other things. So from now on, excuse me, whenever I black, excuse me, a frog in my throat there. From now on, whenever I black out a tank, it's going to get an air stone put in it. This tank, of course, even after being blacked out for 3 days, it didn't even put a dent on all that hair algae, which was what I was trying to eradicate. You know, I've already cleared out all the other stuff. I just wanted to get that hair algae beaten back a little bit. And as you can tell, it didn't touch it. So not sure why, but the hair algae was not damaged by the blackout. Maybe if I let it go for another 2 days, maybe it would finally get to a point where it just collapsed. You know, it couldn't take the darkness anymore. Not that wasn't worded very clearly, but you know, it's going to live on its internal energy for only so long. At some point, if it doesn't have any light, it's just going to run out of energy, and it's all going to sort of die off at once. And I probably didn't go long enough. I saw that I was having issues in there, and so I, you know, got the tank up and running again. Probably wouldn't have been a bad idea to just clean the tank, throw the air stone in there, and then just black it out again and let it keep going. But I didn't, and I think my next approach to getting rid of all that hair algae in there is I'm going to remove this big chunk of java right here, because that's a lot of it growing. I can just physically remove that. And then I'm going to unleash some guppies and maybe some live bears in there, and hopefully over time they'll just start working their way down on the algae. I'm going to have to start feeding this tank less too, especially since that large black ghost knifefish that was in there is no longer there. So the bioload in this tank is going to come down significantly now, and I guess that might be enough to help knock that algae out and get it done. So the only other tank I had worked on was my gudgeon tank, and since I'm not really having everything turned on yet, we'll have to come up here, turn the light on, and then we'll come back down and we will have a look at my gudgeon tank. So nothing seems to be going on in here, although you see some of that black crud kind of peeling off of that leaf back there. When I cleaned this tank out the other day, I must have missed that. So I never have finished with this tank. I just pulled the air stone out of here yesterday to stick in my Black Ghost Knifefish tank because I needed the air stone in there. And so today I'm probably going to get in here and do the final water change. You can kind of see the stuff that was on the bottom. This stuff in here has sort of rolled up around the edges. This is not leaves. Those are those big sheets of stuff that come off of the leaves. And then you can see how this patch on the bottom down here looks like it's pretty much dead as well. And I can just gravel vac that right on out of here. And a lot of this stuff will come out, like this black crud that's on that leaf, that'll peel right off. A lot of that black crud that's on these leaves will peel right off. And then, of course, a lot of what you see is just algae on the glass, and we'll get that cleared up too. So that'll be another little project for me to work on this afternoon. And those are the only 3 tanks that I'm currently working on. The next one's probably going to be my 125-gallon tank here. And it simply needs to have some of its plants removed because it's, you know, looking like that again. And, of course, it needs the glass wiped down because it's looking like that again. And then I think I'm going to, in addition to the ChemiClean treatment on this tank, which I haven't done in a long time, I may black this tank out too. I'm not sure what all of that stuff is. I don't think that's algae. I think that's the same green stuff I've got going on in my Gourami tank, which will require a ChemiClean treatment. So before I black this tank out, I'm going to do the ChemiClean treatment and see what I can get out of there first of all, and then I will come back and, you know, if I've got algae still growing in there or green stuff still growing in there, I can try a different approach. But I think right now just a simple couple of days worth of ChemiClean treatment will get a lot of that crud out of there. And as far as the algae, that's just going to be, you know, like this algae, the stuff on the glass will be simply just getting in there and scraping it off, and I'll be good to go. So here's my waterfall tank, and right now all it's got on is my little overhead light right here. That used to be a spotlight that I had shining right on my little dead nettle up there, and that gave the upper portion of the tank a little bit of light, because my big light here only, you know, maybe from here down is where it really gets a lot of light. Up here is just sort of ambient light. So this kind of fills in those gaps up around the top. It's not a ton of light, but these plants aren't really in need of a lot of light. So that is the 3000K LED I bought. That's the good one from Cree that gives you a really high color rendering. And once I put it on there, I realized it absolutely looks beautiful. I love it. So that's going to stay there. And then, of course, this one is my big light. That will actually light the whole thing up. And that makes a huge difference. And we got everything up and going. So I did plant my water lily. You can see that right there, a fish swimming by it. So that should grow nicely where it is. It's going to get plenty of light. And then I planted that other plant, which I thought was going to be seeds for some reason, but it turned out to be a great big bulb. And so that's it. I kind of left it in its coconut husk packaging like you're supposed to. It gives the roots something to hang on to, and it wicks the water in there. And you can see I've already got that much growth shooting up out of it. So that's going to be kind of exciting. That's going to have, I can't remember what it's called. It's some kind of purple plant, but hopefully that's going to grow up and out, and we're going to get some purple flowers poking out of there here pretty soon. So, all right, everybody, that was my Sunday morning update. Just wanted to make sure my Gourami tank was still up and running. And it looks like my little female honey gourami up there in the corner is coming out and starting to swim around, do her thing. So there we go. Now we can get a look at my little chocolate gourami down there swimming around, looking healthy, doing okay. That's the only fish I was really truly worried about in this tank. And again, because it's a labyrinth fish, I wasn't really worried. All they got to do is just swim up to the surface and gulp air. I know my cories can gulp air, and I'm assuming if a corydoras can do that, my big old platydoras in there probably can do it too. So, again, wasn't too worried about this tank. But in the future, if I black this tank out again, or I should say when I black this tank out again, I will be putting an air stone in here. Just better safe than sorry. I've now lost 2 fish during blackouts, and I don't want to lose any more, and I'm going to chalk that up to oxygen deprivation. So there you go. There's my little Sunday morning update on a few tanks. Hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe. That way you won't miss anything else I got coming up. I am going to be doing some more work, as I just explained, and you don't want to miss any of that good stuff. So thanks for watching this one, and I will see you real soon on the next one.